Hey everybody, it's time for a new video, and today I'm going to go over something that I think is super popular, something that people really want to hear more and more about, and that's Kubernetes. So let's kind of get started and get to the big idea of what is Kubernetes. Well, Kubernetes is an open source container orchestration system for automating application deployment, scaling, and management. So essentially what someone did was say, let's take a little bit of the work that was done with Docker and let's make it even more available, make it more capable of running at massive scale. So that leads us to what Azure Kubernetes Service is. And Azure Kubernetes Service is a managed container orchestration service. So it's a way that Microsoft has provided you with a control plane to do what it is you need to do with Kubernetes, running it highly available, secure, and managed on Azure. So you don't have to build your clusters yourself and maintain them. We'll go ahead and maintain the actual underlying infrastructure that's associated with your clusters. All you have to do is create them, add the correct security rules, and then provide a container that's eventually going to be made from an image. So let's start doing that, all right? We'll get started with step one. So before we actually start building things, why don't we go ahead and go over some concepts? And the concepts we can get here from this web page, I'll make sure it's in the description underneath. We'll be able to find out that Kubernetes is made up of two main components, the cluster master and the nodes. And the cluster master provides the core Kubernetes services for orchestration, and the nodes will run your actual application. The cluster master is made up of Kube API server, etcd, Kube scheduler, Kube controller manager, as long as information on nodes and node pools. The kubelet is the Kubernetes agent that processes the orchestration request from the cluster master and scheduling of the running requested containers. So here's all of this information on how a VM eventually provides you with a Kubernetes cluster. I really recommend you take a look at all of this information and learn exactly what it is you are doing with Kubernetes before you actually start building anything. So let's actually start building something now, right? So let's create a resource group. And if you don't know already, a resource group is a place to put all of the resources you're going to create for your Azure deployment. So in case we want to move them around, or let's say we want to actually delete everything at once, we don't have to go and delete each individual part. If we want to take the whole resource group and delete it, like taking a box and throwing it away, we can do that. So let's go ahead and create a group, and we're going to use this az group create command. So az group create, and what we'll do is specify a name. So we'll say name, and we'll call it AKS demo JG. And we'll state that it's going to be in location East US. Great, that's done. So now we actually need to create a service principal, and let's get into that. So if you've never heard of the service principal, it's another part of the way that we manage security on Azure. An application that needs to deploy or configure resources through Azure Resource Manager must be represented by a service principal, and it's just really like a username and password. It's very simple to set up. Let's go ahead and do that now. So to create a service principal, it can be done right in Cloud Shell with a pretty simple command of just doing it like this. Let me go ahead and grab this command. It should be right here, service principals. Great. So all we have to do to create our command is we'll do like this. And I actually like to do a lot of this in code, because what I like to do is save them as little bash shell scripts and then execute them after I've copied and pasted things in. So what we'll do is code, and what we'll do is create, actually before, let's do make dir AKS, cd AKS, and then we'll do is code, and then we'll call it RBAC creation. So RBAC creation.sh. And all I have to do is just copy this and paste it right in here. I'll save it and close it. And all I have to do is run that. So it's going to create my RBAC configuration. It's going to give me an application ID, a display name, a name, a password, and the tenant ID. So what we need to do is keep hold of this app ID and tenant. So let's just copy this whole thing, and then what we can do is just code and call it RBAC info and just save it right there. Close editor. Great. So now we've got our service principal for our role-based authentication so that we can actually connect where our images for our Kubernetes cluster are going to be stored. It's going to actually have to be able to go somewhere and get images. So in order for that to happen, we need to store it someplace, and that's the next thing we're going to go over. We're going to go over Azure Container Resources, okay? Let's get on to that next. We'll take a quick break. So we created our service principal for our role-based authentication, and the big reason we're doing this is so that we can create an Azure Container Registry, and the Container Registry is going to contain all the Docker images that we create and eventually push up to our Azure Kubernetes Service cluster. So why don't we create a cluster, and after that, what we're going to do is then create the ACR, Azure Container Registry. We're going to create a service principal connection for the two so that they can actually work together, and that when Kubernetes needs an image, it knows where to get one. So let's get started by creating our Azure Kubernetes service, and that's real easy. What we're going to do is type code. Now, there are a bunch of AZ creation information that you can get. You always just go to documentation, get an overview of everything here. Right here we've got the documentation on how to create a cluster, but I've got some tips that I'll show you how to do it real quick. So we were using code before, as I showed you, to create things, and I want to do that again. So what I'm going to do now is type code AKS cluster, and I'm creating a little bash file. And then what I've got already is from one of these tutorials, I've got some of the existing things that we'll need to do to execute. So we're going to use the AZ command to create an AKS cluster, and we're going to call it for our resource group. And what was our resource group's name here? AKS demo JG. So I'll just copy this, and I'll pop in our resource group name as that. And then we'll give the actual cluster a name, and I'm just going to call this JG. Let's fix this. We'll call this JG AKS cluster. You can call it what you want, but I just want to give it an easy name. Then what we're going to do is we're going to enable a few add-ons. We'll have monitoring, HTTP application routing, so we can create a load balancer eventually and route all of our application there. We're going to use Kubernetes versions 1.14.3, and then we're going to also generate SSH keys. We're not going to provide them. And those SSH keys are normally stored right here, and ls.ssh. You can see there's tons and tons of keys that we keep there. So cool. So let's finish this, but I want to use the service principal as well to make sure that we're creating our AKS cluster so that it can work with an ACR, Azure Kubernetes Registry, or I should say Azure Container Registry. So I'm going to state what my service principal is. And remember, we had that RBAC info, so all I have to do is cat that, and I can get the app ID, which is the username. So I will go ahead and state that. And then I need the secret. And don't worry, by the time you try to use this secret, I have already deleted it, so it's okay that it's out there. This is the password right here, and we're just going to go in and copy it, paste it, and then we're going to save it. And that's all the information we're going to need to create our cluster. So all we have to do now is close our editor And let's run that script. So we'll just type bash AKS cluster. And what it'll do is get all the information we've provided it. And then you're going to see this little fun thing. Here we go. In a 3, in a 2, in a 1, it should start creating it. There it is. So this is going to run. And by the time it's finished, what we'll do is tell you, and it's going to output some JSON. And that JSON is going to have all the information about the cluster that you need. So cool. So we've got a few more steps to go, and eventually we're going to run a bash script that I have that's going to eventually connect the script from or I should say it's going to connect the container registry to our Azure Kubernetes service. So I've got a shell script all ready to do that, and I'll show you it when we get back. So this cluster creation will take a few minutes. I don't want you to wait around for me. So I'm going to go ahead, take a break, and when we get back, I'm going to show you the created cluster, and then eventually what we'll do is get the credentials, and then we'll start taking care of connecting, after we create it, an Azure Container Registry to our Kubernetes cluster. Okay? We'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, our cluster's done. As you can see, everything from, there's the SSH keys it created, all the information including the agent pool profiles. There's 3 of total nodes available to us, the OS type, the VM size, and then you can always modify that. What I've given you is just a very, very basic kind of information. We can get the resource group for the nodes, the provisioning state, everything is right there. So let's get the credentials so we can actually start working with it. So real easy, I can just do AZ AKS get credentials. The resource group, as we said before, was AKS demo JG, and the name of our cluster right here. So we'll just go there. Great. So now this cluster is in our current context, and now I can actually start using kubectl to work with our new cluster that's created. So let's take a look at that. So all I have to do now is say do kubectl get nodes. There we go. Now we all have our nodes in our agent pool, and now we know how we can actually get started to using them because they're ready. Great, cool. So what's next? Remember I mentioned we need to create a container registry. A container registry is a place that you can build, store, and manage images for all types of container deployments. So if you were using a single container like Docker, or you wanted to use a Kubernetes cluster with a bunch of different images, you can do that. You can store them all in our Azure Kubernetes cluster container registry. So let's create one. So what I'm going to do is create a ACR, and I'm just going to give it a random name. So I'll just save this as a environment variable. So there you can see that's the name of our ACR. Cool. Now all I have to do is create the actual container registry within our resource group. So I will of course give our resource group name as we've had before. What I will do then is create it and then specify the SKU. The SKU is the pricing level, and this will give it a highly available actually container registry. So there we go. Only should take a second. Oop, I'm already using that name, so let's create a registry with a different name. Okay, we'll just call it JG demo ACR. Okay, cool, great. These things happen. That's why I do them live, so that you can see what happens when you make a mistake. Great. So we've got our registry created and we're all set. So part of this demo comes with a little bit of code that we're going to use. And that little bit of code that we're going to be used is just this demo app. And this demo app, what we're going to do is clone it. So I'll just copy the grid and we'll do git clone. And we can do it right here into the Cloud Shell. Great. And so within there, we'll go into demo app. I've provided you with a really, really simple application. As a matter of fact, if you go into app.js, you'll see it's just outputting hello world to 8,000. But what we want to do is we want to create this into a Docker image, and that's real simple how we're going to do that. So first of all, I've provided you with a Docker file. Very simple Node.js creation, and then exposes the port 8000. And then if you see in here, we've also got a directory called K's, and that's where all the actual portions of the Azure Kubernetes and Azure Container Registry services are part of. So let's take a look at the acr.sh script that I've provided to you in the repository, and it's just going to go ahead. It needs you to fill out a couple of variables. So why don't we just do that now, right? So we'll just code acr.sh, and what we'll do is we'll put our resource group. We were working with it before. All I have to do is copy the resource group name that we had. Our resource group is AKS demo JG, so we'll put that here and here. Our AKS cluster name, all we have to do is grab that. So we'll scroll up a little. We'll get our cluster name, that's my AKS resource group, JK, there it is, JG AKS cluster. So what I'll do is I'll put it here. So now what is this going to do? Let's remind ourselves. We've got a couple of different parts, and I'm going to drop into the portal for a second just to kind of show you what we've created so far, all right? So let me just go over here to our portal. We're going to refresh, make it a little bigger for you. And what we are going to do is go into resource groups. I'm going to use just my particular subscription so I can just see my resource groups. And now we can see AKS demo JG. So let's go into that. And you can see we've got these two clusters created. One is the container registry and one is the Kubernetes service. So what we're going to do here with this bash script is provide the service principal to permit our actual container registry to deploy to the Kubernetes service. So I filled out all of these. So let's just save this. And all I have to do now is just run it. So bash acr.sh. Okay, I forgot some stuff. Let's figure out what I forgot. I think I need to close this. So let's try that again. So let's close editor, bash acr. Okay, so we're missing a few things. Let's figure out what it is we're fishing. I think I did some typos. Yep, I did a typo. That was my fault. So let's just grab this here. This is why I like to do it live, because you can always see the mistakes you make. So we'll put our cluster there, and then, like I said, I just made a quick mistake. The ACS needs to go in here. Azure Kubernetes Registry, ACR I should say. So let's just grab the ACR name right there. Okay, I think we got it right this time. Yep, great. So now we've delegated permission. We've said that they can go ahead and work together, and now the ACR can load its images into the Azure Kubernetes registry. Cool? All right, we're getting real close. Now really what we're doing next is we're going to start building our application and then deploying it. So let's take a look. We'll back up a little and we'll see our app is right here. And what we're going to do, we've got the Kubernetes YAML already kind of created. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I've created two pieces of YAML, and there's the deployment, which actually we'll have to modify, because we're going to have to specify this application here. And after that, we're going to use the load balancer, and the load balancer is actually going to eventually present the application and then move port 8000 to port 80 when it gets forwarded. So let's go ahead and create our image. So what we have here in our demo app is our simple application. It's ready to go, and if we want to start building it, it's as simple as this. We're going to specify ACR build. Then we're going to specify the registry name. I've saved the registry name as a variable, but we can just specify it here just for the sake of simplicity. Let's just specify the registry name right here. Cool. And then what we're going to do is then give the image that we're going to be saving to our registry a name. So we'll call it demo. So we'll call it image, and we'll call it demo app, and we'll just call this latest. And that's the latest tag for the app. And then we'll just say this is where we're going to be building it from. So we'll hit return. And then what it's going to do is go into our code, create a Docker image, save that Docker image, and then push it up to the repository, this ACR that we've created. And by the time this is done, we'll actually be able to look in here and in the repositories. So this is going to take a second until it's done. But here we go. So now it's going to do the push. It's going to push it all up to the repository, and I can just keep refreshing, and by the time it's finished, I know this is fun, folks, but you know, we still have to build things. Building things takes a few minutes sometimes. So it's pushing, and by the time it's finished pushing, it'll be in our repository. This is why we do it live, folks, so we can watch it all happen. And there we go, and let's click refresh. There's our repo demo app with our latest tag. And as you can see here, we've got the JSON showing us that our repo was created and our stuff is there. So we've only got one more step to do to have a deployed application, and that is to start actually loading these YAML files. So we'll do that next. Sounds good? So it's a time to start applying our deployment, and to do that, we can just do kubectl apply -f, and that's going to say apply this kubectl deployment manifest with this file. So what we'll do is just boom, and then we should get the following created. Cool. So let's do kubectl pods, or I should say show pods. Get pods. Like I said, we do it live. Cool. So we got the image backoff starting. Let's find out what's going up next. I know what's wrong. Very, very silly. So these things happen when you don't check first, but I did not specify the image container registry, and that's my fault, and we can do that and fix it very easily. Right here, we go to image. So if you get that image pull error, and let's go back to that real quick before I make this change. This error image pull means that essentially it doesn't know where your Docker image is. And so what I've done is I obviously told it, this is the wrong spot for it. Go here. And it didn't work out. So let's go here and let's get rid of this, and let's put the actual name. And the actual ACR's name is this right here. So I'm just going to grab the host name. I mean, it's much easier to do if we just go right here. We go to overview. We see everything that's here, but I'll just grab the host name and I'll replace the bad info that we had. And then what we're going to do is I've named the tag latest, so I have to update that. So let's just reapply. Configured. Cool. Let's take a look now when we kubectl get pods. There we are. It's container creating. So let's do this with -w, which is like the watch command if you know watch in Linux. And so what it's going to do is it's continue to just watch what's going on as far as these restarts and creates are considered. And when it's ready, you'll get the information. So let's wait for this container to finish creating, and then what we're going to do is apply the load balancer and pretty much finish up. So we're running now. Look at that. kubectl get pods. Demo app is running. Remember, before, when it couldn't get the actual app from the registry, or I should say the container from the registry, we were getting this image pull back off and these other containers error, or I should say image pull from the container error. That's normal. That happens when you don't know where your image is. So I did that kind of intentionally because I wanted to teach you some of these real basic errors that you're going to run into. So we've got one final thing to do, and that's load balancer. And to do that, we apply this just the same way we did to the deployment. So we'll just say load balancer, created. And what we'll do is we will just wait to get the service. So let's wait a minute, and then I'll show you how to do that. So we've had some time for the service for load balancer to be created. Let's go ahead and run the kubectl to get the service. And look, there is demo app, load balancer, and our external IP. So let's see if it works. All I have to do is curl it. Hello world. Oh, it works. There's our hello world right from my app. And what we can do, just to kind of cross-reference if we want to, we can go here to JKAKS cluster, and we can start monitoring our containers, reviewing the logs, finding out information about this really basic application that I put together. So let me just finish up. Kubernetes is hard. It's really hard. It's a lot of things to do. But there is a way for you, the stay-at-home or just getting started administrator who may not necessarily have a ton of resources to you. These are the real easy ways to get started. Use these simple applications. I know it could be funny to try to take, I think it's funny, why load a small item. I saw this funny image of a truck carrying something like this. Like imagine a big tractor trailer like this carrying just a little tiny one part of one of these tubes. I don't know. That's kind of what we did today. Is what we did was took a tractor trailer and just put a little box on it. And that's what you're doing with Kubernetes at this point. When you start using Kubernetes for far more complex applications, you'll really see the value. But if you're going to do something as simple as this, I still recommend app services. These are really simple ways to load, say, Node.js applications or Go or something like that. But for now, what I really wanted to do was show you that there is Kubernetes for everybody. So if you have questions about Azure Kubernetes Service, there's always Twitter. You can get in touch with myself or all the other people on Twitter. Real easy to find. I'm Jay Destro, and like I said, we've got tons of other advocates online. So thanks for watching today, and if you've got any questions, be sure to send them my way. Thanks a lot, and good luck with your journey using Kubernetes.